The evening began with the familiar feeling of uncertainty. My closet, a battlefield of choices, offered no comfort as I searched through the hangars. Sarah, my closest friend from college, had been persistent. "Emily, you have to come. It's not just an anniversary party. It's a reunion." Her excitement was so contagious that it convinced me to agree. But as the day approached, so did my nerves. Eventually, I decided on a navy blue dress. The subtle silver stitching shimmered gently under the soft glow of my bedroom light. It wasn't flashy, but it felt elegant. A safe choice for someone who hadn't attended a formal event in years. As I slipped on my shoes, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. The lines around my eyes and the streaks of silver in my hair told stories of resilience, of a life lived fully, even if not always joyfully. When I arrived at Sarah's house, the backyard looked like something out of a dream. Tiny fairy lights draped over the ancient oaks, casting golden shadows across the perfectly manicured lawn. Lanterns floated gently in the pool, their reflections dancing on the water's surface. The tables were decorated with floral arrangements that could have been taken straight from a wedding magazine, and soft jazz music played in the background, blending with the laughter and chatter around me. I clutched a glass of wine, thankful for the small comfort it offered. As I scanned the crowd, I saw faces from years ago, mixed with strangers. Their voices carried the weight of shared memories. Just as I was about to retreat to the dessert table, a voice interrupted my thoughts. Red or white? I turned, startled, and saw a man holding 2 glasses of wine. His face was warm and welcoming, framed by salt and pepper hair that gave him a distinguished air. "Red," I replied, taking the glass he offered. "I'm James," he said, his smile lighting up his hazel eyes. "Emily," I responded. Our conversation flowed easily, like slipping into a well-worn sweater. James spoke of his late wife with a tenderness that softened his voice, and before long, I found myself opening up about my own story. My divorce, the challenges of finding myself again, and the quiet joy I discovered in painting, which had become my refuge. As the evening stretched on, the crowd around us seemed to fade. When the band began to play a slow song, James extended his hand. "May I have this dance?" I hesitated, but the sincerity in his eyes melted my doubts. Taking his hand, I allowed him to guide me to the dance floor. His hand rested gently on my waist, and we swayed to the music, the world shrinking to just the 2 of us under the canopy of stars. The next time I saw James, it felt like pure coincidence, though perhaps it wasn't. 2 weeks had passed since the anniversary party, and I was at my favorite cafe. It was a quiet place with mismatched furniture and the comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee. "Is this seat taken?" I looked up to see James standing there, a cup of coffee in one hand and a hopeful smile on his face. "James," I said, surprised but pleased. "No, please sit." He settled into the chair across from me, his presence filling the small space between us. The conversation picked up where it had left off, flowing as naturally as the river visible through the cafe's window. James told me about his volunteer work at an animal shelter, his voice lighting up as he spoke about the dogs and cats he cared for. In return, I shared more about my paintings, shyly admitting that I hadn't shown them to anyone outside my small circle. "You'll have to show me sometime," he said, his tone sincere. I laughed nervously, unsure if he was serious. But the following week, he showed up at my door, a bouquet of daisies in one hand and quiet determination in his eyes. "Ready to show me your studio?" he asked, his grin disarming. Leading him inside, I felt a mix of excitement and vulnerability. My small studio was tucked away in the corner of my home, a sanctuary filled with brushes, canvases, and unfinished works. James moved through the space with reverence, pausing to study each piece as though it held a secret only he could uncover. "You have an incredible eye for detail," he said, his voice full of genuine admiration. For the first time in years, I felt truly seen, not just for what I did, but for who I was. Over the next few months, James became a steady part of my life. We spent lazy Sunday mornings wandering through farmers' markets, evenings watching old black and white films, and countless hours sharing stories from our pasts. One crisp autumn afternoon, as we walked along a trail lined with fiery orange and golden leaves, James stopped abruptly. "Emily," he said, his voice steady but full of emotion, "do you ever feel like life gives you second chances when you least expect them?" I nodded, understanding the weight of his question. "Yes, but I think it's up to us to recognize them when they come." He smiled, his eyes searching mine. "Meeting you was my second chance." The words hung in the air between us, their sincerity sinking deep into my chest. Taking my hands in his, James pulled me close, and for the first time in years, I allowed myself to hope for love, for companionship, for a future full of possibilities. That evening, as we sat by the fire in his cozy living room, I reflected on the journey that had brought me to this moment. Life hadn't always been kind or easy, but it had also given me an opportunity to rebuild, to rediscover, and to open my heart again. As James reached for my hand, I knew I wasn't just starting a new chapter. I was rewriting my story, one filled with warmth, laughter, and the quiet certainty that some endings are only the beginning.